Welcome back to The Basement. I'm Steve Lewis. I know I promised that this week we'd continue our series featuring Carl Wilson. Then the fall 2024 issue of Endless Summer Quarterly arrived and an opportunity to chat with ESQ's editor-in-chief David Beard. Of course, I didn't want to pass up the chance to talk with David, so we'll push everything back 1 week and continue our series on Carl Wilson guest appearances beginning next time. As you can see, the new ESQ focuses on the Beach Boys in 1977, inspired in part by the new Ding Dang pop-up store on Brian Wilson's website. In addition to a fun romp through 1977, you get the usual news and reviews, some great coverage of Brian's 82nd birthday bash, an interview with the Beach Boys band's music director, Brian Eichenberger, and much more. My Wi-Fi didn't seem to be working in the basement on the day, so I moved outside for this discussion. Hope you will enjoy my chat with David Beard. I'm here today with our friend David Beard. David, thanks for being back on the show. And before we get started, I just wanted to thank you for the fall 2024 issue of Endless Summer Quarterly. It's got a beautiful cover, among other things. And I really liked in your opening statement how you talked about that you wanted to break from doing, scholarly dives into albums and tributes to people that had recently passed, and you wanted to do a fun issue. And this is definitely a fun issue. I mean, how could it help but be fun when you centered around the track Ding Dang?
For the occasion, I have my Ding Dang shirt on.
Oh, very cool.
It's only 57 seconds long. We could have, had the song playing in the background or something. I didn't think about that.
Yeah, we might drive everybody crazy.
Yeah. Well, as we historically know, Brian did just that. He did drive everyone crazy with that song. That or Shortening Bread, and Shortening Bread is kind of what led to Ding Dang. It is a fun song. It's an upbeat thing. And when the Brian Wilson store at brianwilson.com had this announcement on social media of this store coming, I remember my first reaction thinking, okay, what's the big deal? And then I saw some posts that people were writing on Facebook that, oh, I hope this means we're going to get some sort of rare Love You era thing that's going to accompany this. And so there was a lot of guessing in regard to that. And then when the day came, it was just a lot of apparel, a hat, a shirt, a towel.
For anybody who hasn't seen it, there's a little ad for it here on the back. I've ordered the shirt and I've ordered those badges, but they haven't arrived yet.
There's 5 of them to a set, so you'll get 5.
Yeah. I thought the prices were not bad too. With so many of these things nowadays, it seems like they're trying to wring every last penny out of you. And the logo is beautiful. I wouldn't have bought it if the logo wasn't so beautiful.
When I went to the site and looked, and I paged to the bottom, and the ad on the back of the magazine, there's a QR code to take people right to it. I noticed that there were 4 demos from the Love You album, Ding Dang not being one, but it inspired me to just kind of want to go back and listen to the Love You album, listen to the Adult Child album, and then listen to the different versions of Ding Dang that I have, including early versions of Shortening Bread, Clangin', which is also Ding Dang. I looked at the video, and the video was launched a couple of years ago, which is Brian from 66-ish, just being silly, throwing water over the banister or something, and then they put that 66 footage to the 57-second Ding Dang. And I just thought, that's funny. It's just fun. And it was kind of that little moment that I just piggybacked off of. It made me want to go back. It's funny because I've been doing this for so long. I thought if I go back to 2007 and get my interviews with Brian, Al Jardine, and Love You album engineer Earl Mankey and bring them forth to this issue, is that cheating for someone who's maybe been a lifelong subscriber? Are they going to feel, cheated? And I just thought, heck, if I get a letter and they're upset about something, I'll send them a free button. I'll send them a free Ding Dang button or something.
You're asking for a lot of letters.
Well, I only have so many buttons, folks.
Right.
But I actually asked Michael DeMartin of Design Site to design that back cover ad to mention those demos. Because originally he sent me just an apparel ad. And I said, Michael, I really think it's important we point people to the music. Obviously, when we want to drive people to the site so that they can order the different items, the clothing, the hat, the towel, whatever. But I really want people to know what's there musically, those demos. Singularly, it's a Ding Dang issue. From the larger format, it's a Love You album issue. And that was kind of that connectivity that I thought was really vital. If people like the Love You album, fantastic, then they love this issue. If they've either never heard the Love You album, maybe they've heard these demos, maybe they've just heard Ding Dang, that's kind of that point. That's why I repurposed those older interviews. I wanted people to become more intrigued if they didn't know it, hopefully discover something new about the album if they do like it, because there's no Earl Menke interviews in the new Beach Boys book. So again, kind of bringing this together in a kind of this LP format idea, right? It's a 57-second song, but I really wanted the Love You album to be the focus. And I specifically found a playful image of the Beach Boys for the cover to kind of inherently connect to the fun associated with the song itself. The timing was great because ESQ's got a new writer. Her name's Amanda Metzger. And Amanda's been great. She came in, she was like, do you have anything I can write for you? What can I do? And I just thought, okay, I'm going to give this young lady her first assignment. And I sent her the different versions of Ding Dang. And I said, okay, here you go. I want you to write about these different versions of Ding Dang.
Wow.
And the Beach Boys catalog is so different and diverse. So you can like any one thing from any era. And if you like Pet Sounds, you may like Love You, but there's no guarantee anything is connected. So when she wrote the article, I was very happily surprised. She's a great writer. And at the same time, I automatically assumed that this artwork was Mark London. I just made that assumption because Mark, has been doing Brian's programs and posters for years. So the first thing I reached out to him, he said, I didn't do it. So that surprised me. So I went to Michael DeMartin, who runs Brian's website, a design site, and it turned out Michael's daughter did it. And I said, Michael, could you write an article about how this artwork came together? Because I want people to know more and more about this. I know it's just a pop-up store, but I want to tie it all together. And he did, and we got that article. And this is all kind of inspired from the summer edition because there was so much with the Beach Boys by the Beach Boys book and then the documentary on Disney Plus. That summer issue was such a heavy review and news issue, just wall to wall, which was rare for the magazine. And I kind of ended up really liking that. I liked that it had this kind of one thing after the other kind of condensed together. And I really enjoyed interviewing Mike, Al, and the documentary director, Frank Marshall. I was just so happy. I was like, I tied Frank's father, Jack Marshall, wrote the theme song for the TV show Karen back in the 60s that the Beach Boys sang. And I just thought that was such a hoot. So I tied that all together in the summer issue. And I think that's kind of where the fun began. This kind of lighthearted sense of joy, just that energy. And that's what I wanted to celebrate. I wanted to celebrate the fun. And that's kind of what I gleaned from the documentary. This is a very historic group, but documentary is another subject. They didn't get into it enough. I want a 6-parter. But at the same time, for the people that I hipped to it who have Disney Plus, weren't even aware that there was a new documentary. Everyone knows the Beach Boys, but I would say, hey, check it out. And they would watch it and say, hey, I watched that and I didn't know half that stuff. So for me and you and many others, a lot of stuff was covered. We already know most of it. But I liked being able to tell people and share something that's on a major platform streaming service. So my end result of all of this stuff over these last 2 issues is, isn't this cool? Because when I got the Beach Boys by the Beach Boys, I was like a little kid again. I mean, I was like that teenager discovering the Beach Boys for the first time, right after my discovery of Jan and Dean. That made me feel that way. And I felt like Carl and Dennis were alive in that book. And that energy is kind of still carrying with me to this moment. So that's kind of where all of this comes from.
Yeah, well, it really came through, I thought, in this issue. And it was nice for me, too, because I've been thinking about various Beach Boy albums and different things for the channel, but I really hadn't given much thought to Love You in a long time. And after reading this, I went back and gave it another listen and, don't think I heard anything I had never heard before, but a lot of stuff I hadn't really thought about. And as you say, every Beach Boy record has such a different mood, and there's no guarantee if you like one that you're going to like another. So it's almost like visiting a different band or a different artist to put this album on. So thanks for inspiring me to go back and listen to this again.
Yeah, oh, well, sure. And the timing was so funny. I can't remember how it popped up, but I was on YouTube and somehow the Roger McGuinn interview from Echoes in the Canyon that Jacob Dylan did popped up on my little feed over on the side. And I clicked on it, and he's talking about the night that Brian came to his house and wanted amphetamines, and they wrote Ding Dang together, and he went to bed and woke up, and Brian was still sitting there playing Ding Dang. And I just, okay, I've got to include that. It's pretty incredible what I was able to do with a 57-second song and make it into
yeah. Yeah, when I saw that the issue was going to revolve around Ding Dang, I thought, well, there's a guy who likes a challenge. Hey, let me ask you a question. This is like a devil's advocate thing about Ding Dang. You know how Brian always says it's his favorite song on the album. Of course, McGuinn says he played it all night that night when they wrote it. But do you think Brian could be putting us on?
There's two. So yes, to both. First of all, and I think this is true, Audrey taught, I think, all the boys when they were young, boogie woogie on the piano. You know, a repeated pattern. That kind of lends itself to this shortening bread thing, that once Brian got into shortening bread and he discovered that chord progression, you can ask anybody through the years, he would just sit and bang that repetitive chord progression. He didn't do it his whole career, but once it started, it didn't go away. So I do believe on the Love You album, whether you're his closest friend or you're a stranger or he's doing an interview, I think his answer would be consistent in that Ding Dang is the favorite cut off that album. I know he likes other songs off that album. He's often mentioned The Night Was So Young, but whether he was troubled or in a great mood or whatever it was, he'd get into this repetitive pattern and he would just play it. Number one, I wholly believe 100% it is locked in the brain and he knows it 100%, and he's not putting anybody on in terms of, do you know the song Ding Dang and do you like it? That, no doubt in my mind, because that's a pattern that he did that is who he is. It's of him, 100%. Now, that same basic connectivity between what any one person would learn at an early age and how that would evolve for them throughout their life and kind of a return to something. His mother taught them boogie woogie. So I would imagine anytime that he puts his hands on the piano, he thinks of Audrey.
Yeah.
So that association, I think, is there for him, and I think I would imagine that's something he cherishes. So he called his mom Mom. He called his father Murray. So
yeah. Yeah, that tells you something right there for sure.
It does, yes.
For me, this era is sort of like the one big box set that I'm really looking forward to that we still haven't had.
I am too. These box sets. I'm hoping if it's Love You and Adult Child, those are Brian mostly projects with Beach Boys on them. I don't know what the other Beach Boys were contributing so much at the time in terms of musical significance. Maybe they'll have some live shows like they've done with the previous Feel Flows and Sail on Sailor sets. That'd be interesting. I think it would be. Maybe the 75 Beach Igo tours, that's what I would like to see.
Yeah.
But we're kind of almost passing that. So I hope that whatever this next thing is, that will have like the Beach Igo shows like they did with Carnegie. But don't know. I would like to think if they're going to do another box set that we're going to have some Dennis material that was from Pacific Ocean Blue, and they'll find a way to kind of get that in there and combine it. Dennis was a force in 77.
Yeah.
And if they do a live set, if Dennis ever did any of those songs, River Song, Pacific Ocean Blue live, I'd love that to be in there.
From what I've heard, they did quite a few of the Love You tracks live in 77 and then kind of dropped those from the set. So hearing live versions of them, which I've heard, but I'd love to get an official version, would be fantastic. And I also understand that Dennis opened for the Beach Boys at a few
shows. Yes, he did.
Now, I don't know if any of that, now I understand it was pretty ramshackle, but from a historic standpoint, if any of that was recorded, boy, it would be amazing to hear Dennis live solo in 77.
It would be. And it was basically the Beach Boys band playing with Dennis. The Beach Boys band would come out and play with Dennis first. And the problem they ran into is Dennis was kind of a free form artist. Dennis was almost like a member of the Grateful Dead when it came to performing his own material. He would just kind of come out and just whatever, and the guys were like, well, Dennis, this isn't this. You can't just vamp. We have to.
Yeah.
We don't know what you're doing. So that's the problem they ran into. A quick aside, Dennis Dyken, the drummer for the Smithereens, had actually bought a ticket for one of Dennis's shows in 1977, and then Dennis canceled that tour. So Dennis Dyken took the ticket back for a refund, and he is kicking himself to this day.
Yeah. Oh man, would that be a cool collectible? Oh
Yeah.
God. Yeah.
Man.
So they actually issued tickets. I mean, it got that far. I wonder if their rehearsals were recorded. They did rehearse.
Yeah, they did. I did a lot of interviews with those guys back for the 2008 Pacific Ocean Blue Bamboo twofer that Sony Legacy released that I worked on with John Stebbins. I did most of the interviews. And I don't remember anyone particularly telling me that they recorded any rehearsals.
Yeah.
And I think that lent itself to the problem that when Dennis tried to open for the Beach Boys, they weren't able to replicate what they did in the studio because Dennis didn't think that way.
Yeah.
He just, like Brian, put his fingers on the piano and wanted to do mood.
Right. Yeah, I could see that. Well, if it's out there, even if it's a ramble.
Well, they would have it, they being either Sony or Universal, and hopefully that they would do their due diligence to get that material over. But when you're dealing with different labels,
Yeah.
who knows?
Yeah. Well, anyway, there's a lot of things I can wish for.
That's right.
Of course, I first heard a lot of the unreleased stuff on this back in '86 or so. And I've kind of lost track of what's been officially released and what hasn't at this point. And I know a lot of it was on that 30 Years Harmony set.
Still, I Dream of It. It's over now. Have both.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think I can kind of see why those tracks would have stayed in the can in 1977. As much as I love them and as good as they are, they wouldn't, I think, have appealed to teenagers, particularly teenagers in 1977 who were listening to.
They're listening to Peter Frampton. Frampton Comes Alive.
Frampton Comes Alive, yeah, or Disco.
He wrote Still I Dream of It and It's Over Now, I think, for Sinatra.
Yeah.
He wanted Sinatra to record them. And he went big band. He returned to working with Dick Reynolds, who he did half the songs on the Christmas album in '64. So for Brian, I don't think I thought that was I think the stuff for Adult Child that he did with an orchestra is very ambitious. For him in '77, considering the shape that he was diagnosed in and everything else, and that Landy was involved, I consider the Adult Child album very ambitious. Yes. Musically, Love You and Adult Child are fascinating. I don't consider them my favorite, but I don't dislike them in any way, because I think everything in context has its place.
Yeah. Thanks very much for being here, David. And thanks once again for this issue. This is a lot of fun. I always look forward to this every quarter. Really appreciate the work that goes into this. And I want to urge everybody out there watching to pick up a copy. You will really enjoy it.
And I'll just close with telling everybody the next two issues of ESQ, if you like Brian Wilson Productions, will be mind-boggling.
Mind-boggling. Man, I'm looking forward to that.
Oh, yes. Geared to the hardcore collectors. So it's really deep.
Great. Keep it coming, David. Thanks very much for being here. Always a pleasure to talk to you. Thanks very much.
Thanks for having me on.
Bye.
That'll do it for this week. As you can see, since my chat with David, my t-shirt and my badges have arrived. I'm sure you'll see these on the channel again. I want to thank David Beard one more time for appearing on the show. Always a pleasure and much appreciated. Have a great week. I look forward to your comments. Thanks for watching. Bye.